Hey guys, and welcome back. I guess that's a YouTuber intro, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, well, it's a very typical one, I'd say.
Why is your color yellow? What happened here?
I don't know what that is. I mean, like it seems like my color anyway always changes. Like at the beginning it was red, then it turned to black, and right now it's it's the German flag. I just realized that it was red, then it was black, now it's yellow. I mean, it's not the perfect order, but it is the German flag.
Yeah, it's going through the motions or something. I don't know what the heck. But anyway, guys, we are back with another podcast, talking about the various ghost states we discussed this month, on the channel. So yeah, let's just go straight into it. I think it's pretty interesting that there were, a lot of failed bids for statehood in the US. And some of these states actually did play into, American history in rather significant ways, like Franklin and I guess you could say to a lesser extent West Albania and stuff like that. But yeah, Manuel, as the European in group, what do you think?
I think it's very interesting because from most of these states, I never heard of them
Hmm.
before we actually because I mean the states was actually your idea
Oh, sure.
because I actually didn't know that that there are so many states who actually never came to realization. Um, so yeah, I think that's fascinating. Um, and some of those actually pretty have cool flag designs
Yeah, yeah.
um, as well. But actually, I think in general, like U.S. state flag designs, actually, I think many of them look cool.
Well,
Um,
that's getting into a whole other story because I agree with you. There's some really well designed state flags like California, Texas, Colorado, but
Michigan.
you like Michigan's flag?
Wait, do I have? I don't want to say something wrong. Do I
Well,
have the wrong image in my head?
I mean, Michigan, it's not the worst one out there. No disrespect to any Michiganders or anything, but I was going to say, like, there's far too many flags, I think, that are simply the state seal on a blue background. Like, a flag should symbolize something, it should represent or convey a message, something, without, you know, words and having to explain itself. And that's why I like another good example would be like New Mexico. That's a really well designed state flag. And I do think there are some really well designed ones out there, but I think there's also some pretty, poorly designed ones where it's kind of like what I just said, state seal on a blue background, if that.
Yeah, but I like our Michigan country ball. That was a cool design.
Yeah, yeah. No, and I do agree some of the ghost states had interesting flags. I mean, I've seen like on, various subreddits and stuff like that where you have people designing alternative flags. I've seen some better designs, but still I actually do kind of like Jefferson's flag. Lincoln is kind of, I mean, Lincoln is kind of just like Washington State's flag, except with Abraham Lincoln. But still, Absaroka. Actually, I actually kind of liked Absaroka's flag. I don't know why. It kind of had this weird pennant, like racing. It was interesting. I don't know.
Do you actually know why it's pronounced Absoroka and not Absoroka or yeah,
Uh,
why is it pronounced Absoroka?
well, like we said in the video, it came from, if I'm correct, the Hidatsa tribe's word for the Crow people, which meant like
Ah,
children of the
yes, yeah,
large
yeah. There
beaked
was
bird. So it comes from one of the Native American languages in the area. And I'm not saying the pronunciation is 100% accurate. It may have been changed a little bit, but yeah.
yeah.
So okay, on that note, no, so yeah, you found it interesting that there were all these wannabe states basically, and still some of them are floating around out there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like by the point that this podcast is uploaded, you guys probably already saw all of ours. And if you didn't, go to check them out.
Yeah, definitely we'll add a calling card here.
Yeah. Yeah, but no, I thought these states were really interesting. Yeah, like I liked
Oh, I was going to ask what was your favorite, but okay, if you want to go for it.
Sequoia.
Sequoia?
Yeah, I liked Sequoia.
It was interesting, especially because just putting it out there, this was not the only bid for like, a Native American, well, Native American statehood or something like that. You had efforts in Alaska with the North Slope, the Navajo. So yeah, there were some interesting ones, and I mean, of course, there's other ones as well. But yeah, no, Sequoia was pretty interesting, especially the whole weird history behind how, the Oklahoma Territory and the Indian Territory got combined to form the state of Oklahoma, and how there was, Cimarron and which was neutral strip, no man's land, and then, Sequoia, like you mentioned. There was a lot of it could have fragmented. It seems at a lot of different points during its history.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I absolutely like that one. But
Hmm.
what about you? What was your favorite one?
Huh. I mean, the history behind quite a few of them is interesting. I gotta be honest, Franklin that's pretty interesting how this, little wannabe state almost got into the Union. It almost became, a legit US state, but when it didn't happen, eventually kind of went off on its own as like a de facto republic, I guess you could say. And with the war with the Native American people in the area, was kind of flirting with Spain. It was like that's just such an odd story. That definitely seems like it could be adapted into a movie or something someday. But I don't know why, but Jefferson always just has this appeal to me. It feels like it makes sense for the West Coast for a fourth state to be there, and it came very close to it in, well, some regards, before World War II happened and everything went
Yeah,
off the rails. But it kind of does make sense with, Northern California and Southern Oregon. When you look at like the socio-political factors, the geography, there's like I said, it just makes sense to me. And in that same vein, I think Lincoln makes a lot of sense as well. How it deals kind of with the identity crisis between North and Southern Idaho, along with, Eastern and Western Washington State. I think those two make a lot of sense on the map of the U.S. So I guess
yeah.
I would say one of those two. I kind of like Superior too. I think that's an interesting one. I mean, they're all interesting.
But don't you feel like to feel superior?
Yeah, exactly. That's always, the joke.
Yeah, I know it's a bad joke, but I like to bring up bad jokes.
Yeah.
I think the people notice that. No,
Oh.
but you know what actually I thought was pretty funny about the flag.
Hmm.
When I first time saw the flag of Absarca,
Mm-mm.
I thought like, hmm, I didn't like the design. I mean, for me, it was like I saw it was like that looks like a baseball flag or whatever from a team.
Yeah, no, it does.
And 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 the funniest thing then was like that just later I discovered that actually was that the representative or whatever of Absarca was a former baseball
Oh
player.
yeah, the
And I was like, what the hell?
A.R. Swicker, the self-proclaimed governor guy. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was like, oh, okay. I think I know who did the design.
No, and that one is kind of cool because it's got this, I don't know. I mean, not just the flag, but like the story. It's got this weird, 1930s Depression era vibe to it. FDR, these independent conservative ranchers in the high plains. That's an interesting story, and it's kind of weird to see how much work was done by the small group advocating for Absorca. They had license plates, they had a flag, they had a Miss Absorca competition. You had the King of Norway just kind of come through there. There was a lot of stuff going on, and I don't know. Again, with any of these states, if things had swinged like one way or another, they could have been on the map. It could have been different.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually, I liked as well the pictures we chose for that time
Hmm.
because I mean in our first video because I don't know, I was watching it and I was like, hmm, like if you look into detail on those pictures, I feel like, yeah, actually these times were pretty horrible, but when you see them on the picture, they look like, oh, these look like peaceful times. And of course they were not. But I don't know. It just gives me at least this sense of an easier life, even though it was not,
Hmm. No, I kind of get that. There's definitely a
because it
nostalgia
looks very
factor.
calm, very like deserted. I think
Like
that's why.
a calm
Yeah,
Western Americana, I guess.
yeah,
But
yeah. Look,
no, it's really interesting, and I was going to say one common thread though that I think you see with, Absaroka and Jefferson and so many of the other states we talk about, was representation. And I mean, obviously that's kind of obvious, but it's these bigger states, and some of these states were really not that big at the time, but there was a group, a group of people, whether it was in a region or an area or whatever the factors were, but for one reason or another, felt they were not being represented. They felt their issues were being ignored and they were being sidelined. And that was what gave rise to so many of these movements. I mean, Jefferson arguably started over, infrastructure, lack of infrastructure. And the same could be said with Absaroka. Sequoia, you could look at, actual representation. Cimarron, it was the same thing. There was no law, there was no order, there was nothing. They were just kind of abandoned to their own. And, kind of the same happened with Franklin, West Sylvania. All these groups, it's basically they were part of a larger entity and they just felt they were ignored.
Yeah, yeah, that's like very often actually one of the big factors for, yeah, let's say when for states or countries when they declare independence is as well because they didn't have a representation or they didn't feel so.
Oh no, exactly.
I mean, the whole U.S. was actually a big factor for. I mean, the whole Declaration of Independence was actually in parts because of that.
Yeah, no, it's a common thread throughout a lot of these secessionist or separatist movements or groups seeking, autonomy or something like that. It's the lack of representation. And I find that really interesting how that motivated, not just these groups, but like many of the ghost countries we've talked about as well. I mean, I know it's kind of obvious that's a big motivating factor for why someone might be like, hey, we can do better on our own. But still, it's interesting to see that as such a recurring theme, um, you know, not just on the national level, but now moving it to a state level within the US.
Yeah, I mean that's actually very interesting. And in Germany, actually, it seems like the things are actually going in the opposite direction, more or less,
Also, more
because
consolidation, basically.
actually even fusion of certain states.
Okay.
Um, because Germany right now has 16 states.
Hmm.
Um, and out of them, like you have three very small ones, which are the states of Bremen, Hamburg, and Berlin, which are
Okay.
city states basically. Um, and they thought about fusions pretty often of these states to facilitate the process of governance and stuff. Um, yeah, but I mean, there was like a referendum if Germany, no, if Berlin and Berlin is laying in the the territory of Brandenburg,
Hmm.
which is another state. They were talking about to fusionate, but I think the referendum was for the people of Brandenburg, and they said no.
Hmm.
But that was some time back. I mean, I think that was like in the 2000s or something like that, or maybe even earlier. I don't remember. I don't know if I mean because they're still sometimes talking about that.
Hmm.
Um, but for Berlin and Brandenburg, you got the problem that they are very, very different from each other because Brandenburg is, yeah, sparsely populated and Berlin is densely populated. And of course, if you fusion them, that would give the people of Berlin probably too much power over the rest.
That's
Um,
actually interesting. Not trying to sideline you here, please go on with it, but I was going to say there was a somewhat recent vote in Japan, in Osaka, to merge the city's 24 wards into like one unit, kind of in the same vein, so a fusion thing, and that was defeated. But no, that's interesting that there's this push for more, like I said, consolidation, fusion, agglomeration in Europe and well, some other countries as well. But yeah, no, sorry, go on. I cut you off there.
no, like so the story of Berlin Brandenburg is, as I said, complicated because of representation. First of all,
Hmm.
um, then secondly as well that I mean Berlin, West Berlin was well. I mean they did that in the 90s, as I said. So until basically 5 years ago or whatever at that time, it was the one was Eastern Germany, so belonging to the Soviet-led
Hmm.
part, and the Western part was basically, yeah, belonging to the US-led bloc,
Hmm.
um, which of course made them very differently, like in their kind of understandings. I mean, like in their kind of worldview, let's say.
Sure, sure.
Um, you can still see that nowadays in the elections that the results are very different.
Oh
Of
yeah.
course, another factor is as well that the east of Germany is much less urbanized than the west. But
Yeah.
even this whole um, socialization or whatever was totally different. And that
Well,
was another reason why they didn't do the fusion.
and I'm sure you've seen those maps, like on Instagram or whatever, that kind of showcase basically what you're saying, parts of countries that used to be, divided along a socio-political line or part of another country. Like, I swear I've seen them a lot for like Poland and Romania, where, this part used to be part of Austria-Hungary, this part used to be part of Germany, and how the various groups, the party alliances fall along those lines. It's interesting to see how history still has an impact in everyday politics.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely is. When you see, I mean, it's the German elections are upcoming, and what is actually always, at least it was always like this, that parties like Die Linke and the AfD
Mhm.
um, were very strong in the east, whereas in the rest of Germany they were mostly not too strong. Um, and yeah, it's very interesting because you can very often see like where the old boundaries were between West and East Germany
Mhm.
just by looking at the map. I mean,
Yeah.
the political map.
Oh yeah, no, I'd imagine that. That is really interesting. And it is interesting, like I said, I feel like I'm using that word quite a lot, but how, over in Europe there's that push for consolidation or merger. And like that example I gave in Japan, and I'm sure there's plenty of others, because when I think about it, taking it back to the US for a second, I can't really think of too many, at least off the top of my head, pushes for mergers. The only one that comes to mind right now, and I'm sure there are others, I'm just not thinking of them, but is that Greater Idaho thing we mentioned in one of our videos. That is interesting how they want to take some of those counties from Oregon and possibly even further and make this greater Idaho entity. Because everything else I think of when you think of California, it's about splitting it up. When you think about Texas, it's about splitting it up. And even some other states you wouldn't think of. I mean, there's, kind of a drive to split, and not a really big one, but I mean, there are some who advocate splitting up Arizona, Colorado. Yeah, it's quite a few.
Yeah, yeah. Like I mean, you got as well provinces here which are, I mean, where at least some people would like to see them
Oh, sure.
splitting. Like if
Is it
not only from
Bavaria?
other regions, but actually even from the countries.
Are we
Like
talking like Bavaria?
you know, Germany's relationship with Bavaria is always a little difficult.
Well,
No,
Bavaria is
like
kind of the Texas of Germany, if I'm right,
yeah,
right?
it definitely is. I mean, like whenever they're like
I
when you
mean,
talk
no
with
disrespect with that.
people,
I mean, no disrespect, but I'm just saying Bavarians, from my understanding, are very proud and independent.
yeah, yeah. It's definitely like that. I mean, whenever you see like Germans or when they talk about Germans, like I mean nowadays that got a little better, but until like 10 years ago, you got like the Germans were always in their lederhosen and bratwurst and a beer, and I was like, well, come on. I mean, it's just Bavaria which is doing it. I mean, okay. I mean, Germans like eating bratwurst and drinking beer. That's
Yeah.
true. But we don't have the lederhosen, please. No, no, we love Bavarians, but they are definitely a little different to the rest of Germany.
Hmm.
Um, and I think there were talks as well to make them independent. I mean, they are actually called Free State of Bavaria, um, but I think there's no real serious intention of really splitting them from Germany. At least
Sure.
I think so. I could be wrong here.
Oh, that could be something to
Um,
look into. I mean, if maybe not a
ghost
ghost country, a
countries?
ghost geography. Well, there was independent Bavaria at various points in
Yeah,
history.
yeah. There was, yeah.
So,
Um, but there was even independent Brandenburg, and
true.
yeah.
True, true.
Um,
Well, I mean, if we
we
go
got
back
all the
far
states
enough,
from the Holy Roman
yeah, I was
Empire.
going to say if we go back far enough, it's just like so many little princedoms and fiefdoms
Yeah,
and stuff under the, HRE.
we got a lot to do if we do them.
Yeah, that's
No,
definitely like a multi-month series probably.
yeah, it's a 1 year special. Like where every week a ghost country, and then we would still have like I don't know, uh, like 3 or 4 years of content just of that.
Oh my gosh.
Um, yeah, but there's, for example, as well the region of Veneto
Okay.
in Italy.
Hmm.
There was actually, yeah, I mean, you had Veneto is the region where Venice is actually laying,
Mm-mm.
and for a long period of time they were trying to split up from Italy. You had a certain Bossi, that was his name, um, and then later you had Salvini, who were both like, yeah, basically saying that Veneto is the best region in Italy, let's say, and they didn't want to have to do anything with the rest of Italy. Later, they enlarged the area where they were saying, no, actually, not only Veneto, northern Italy. Um, yeah, and then later, they became famous for wanting Italy to split up from Europe. I'm just waiting for the next bigger step. It's like, but then it's going to be difficult. Split Europe from the rest of the world? Well,
Well, I mean,
no, but
obviously, if we get into that, there's so many little secessionist movements or autonomous movements in Europe too. I'm thinking of like Catalonia, the Basque region, Brittany,
yeah, that's yeah.
Corsica. It just the list goes on and on and on.
Yeah, no, I just had these two countries in my mind, or states in my mind, because I have strong ties to Italy and Germany. That's
Sure,
why. Yeah.
sure, but I
But
mean,
there are several ones in
oh yeah,
Europe. Yeah,
there's tons of them, and I'm sure we're going to cover most of those in time. But like, there's even like random ones you just wouldn't expect here and there. Like, yeah,
yeah, yeah. I mean, like, to be honest, to our Italian friends here, I know that that whole stuff is much more complex than I just explained it. But
for sure.
just for the people who didn't know exactly what that was, and I know that the majority of people in Venice don't want to split up.
Hmm.
So but there are definitely some people.
So, okay, now taking it a step back, and I know we're a little bit all over here, but why do you like Sequoia? Why did you find that one interesting? I'm just kind of curious. Was that just the history behind it, the name? I mean, I will admit I wish that one had a flag. I wish all the
Yeah,
ones we talked about had a
yeah,
flag.
yeah. I think like that whole story of Sequoia was
Hmm,
interesting, and yeah, as well that it was basically a state which I don't know how to explain that. It's basically a wish like from native Indians or Native Americans.
sure.
And if I say Native Indians, it's a little different story. No, I'm talking about Native Americans who wanted to create their own state.
Well, yeah, and I mean,
Um,
just to tie it in quickly, I mean, there's the whole association with the Trail of Tears and how many of those so-called
yeah,
five
exactly.
tribes ended up in Oklahoma, and yeah,
Yeah, and yeah, I think that was the reason why it was for me the most interesting one. I like the name as well.
it is a cool name.
Yeah, and I really wish as well that there was a real good flag because
Yeah, we need a
there's
flag for
so much
Sequoia.
potential. There is so much potential.
Oh no,
So
we
guys, if you
definitely
are
need
a
a
graphic
flag.
designer, guys,
Yeah,
so if you are one, do one for Sequoia.
yeah, no, that would be awesome if somebody was to do that, and we could share that or something. But no, I agree with you. It's a fascinating history, and like I said, it's not the only uh in that vein. It's like not the only one. I mean, there was like I said, there was agitation, or not agitation, but there were moves to kind of do the same with North Slope up in Alaska. Um, there's always been kind of talk about the Navajo and what is, the American Southwest, primarily Arizona and New Mexico, but you've got those little bits in Utah and Colorado as well. The Navajo Nation kind of becoming its own. I mean, it is its own thing in a way, but I mean, literally like its own state. They actually have a pretty cool flag, by the way. And
Yeah,
there's definitely others, but no, I agree. It's definitely a unique moment in American history that, yeah, it could have gone one way. I mean, it would have been interesting to see if it went the other way, but who knows? Like I said, with that Supreme Court case, I don't really think we're going to see a state of Sequoia, but it definitely does open the door on some of these territorial issues in Oklahoma.
yeah. I mean, that's I think nowadays I don't say impossible, but for most, I would say it's pretty hard to split from a state or whatever
Oh,
because
100%, yeah.
I mean, yeah, like for those people who advocate it, I mean, of course it brings them benefits, but on the other hand, like for those states who lose territory, of course, nobody wants to lose weight or um, territory,
Oh yeah.
or just very few people would accept that. So that's always a difficult issue.
No, and you've had referendums seeking for, various parts of the state to break off and become their own thing. The most recent, I mean, I know there's others, but the one that just comes to mind was those counties in northeastern Colorado, or at least northern Colorado.
Mm.
But anyway, the point is that went nowhere. The referendum happened, and quite a few voted for it. But as you mentioned, the state of Colorado is not going to just be like, okay, go off on your own, do your own thing. And it's not just a loss of territory or a prestige thing, I think. When you look at, again, bringing it back to Jefferson for a second, California is not going to let Northern California go because, I mean, that's where most of the water is. And, for the
Yeah,
Imperial Valley and all the agriculture projects in California and also just the Southwest in general, yeah, that's not happening. They're
yeah,
not going to let that happen.
yeah, yeah. I do agree here, but it's actually really interesting for me because, for me it was just always like since I'm young, okay, United States, 50 states, but actually that there were actually states added until not too long time ago. There was actually for me like, okay, I didn't know that, but I think the reason for that is actually because the pop culture from the US was getting stronger after the 50 states were already, I mean, after they were already 50 states, you know?
Hmm.
So, like, for example, wasn't there a movie which was called The 51st State or something like that? I have something like this in my mind, but I could be wrong here.
Yeah, I can't
But
remember a move.
yeah, but I always had in mind it was 50 states, but that is actually that whole. Actually, it's still possible to add more states.
Oh yeah,
Like I think we're talking about Puerto Rico and Washington D.C. as own states.
yeah. And Alaska and Hawaii were the most, the last ones added to the union.
Yeah,
But no, to your point, yeah. I mean, DC is a unique one because there's some constitutional things with that. But I mean, still, DC statehood is up there. Puerto Rican statehood is out there. Technically, any of the other territories. I mean, it could happen too with, the U.S. Virgin Islands or Guam. Um, yeah, Samoa, American Samoa. I mean, theoretically, any of those could, if they got, enough of the statehood movement and various things went one way or another, it could happen.
yeah. Oh, and for the people who didn't know, Hawaii was joining the U.S. in 59,
Hmm.
1959.
So was
So
Alaska.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that was actually much later than I would have thought.
Well,
Like I would have thought like Alaska and Hawaii that they joined like in the 20s, 1920s or whatever.
no, and I was going to
Um,
say that plays in with a little bit of an interesting thing when we had our flag episode this month as well. But I was going to say, think about it. The flag was different, during World War II. I mean, it's just really kind of interesting to think that, like, the American flag is so iconic. It's like so many people think it is what it is. I mean, or it was that for most, if not all, of its history. But no, just like the map, the flag also underwent a significant amount of change in, not that recent past.
yeah, yeah, that's true.
And I think that's just kind of fascinating. Yeah, but no, to your point, the map, the flag, everything was in flux. And I mean, that's natural. I mean, that's
Yeah, yeah, it
countries
is.
are in a way kind of like living things. They evolve over time. I mean, we may think of it as static today, but no, there's constant ongoing change, and I guarantee things will probably be different one way or another. 50 or 100 years from now, not just for the U.S., but I mean everywhere.
Yeah. Oh, and I just saw it. Actually, there was the movie The 51st State, uh, released in 2001.
Oh, really?
So yeah, so there was, but I don't know if it has anything to do with creating a new state. I mean, I know that there was Samuel L. Jackson, so it must be a good movie. But yeah, I don't know. I gotta look into it.
Okay, so if you could pick a 51st state, you're just, I don't know, you've
Sequoia,
got the power.
Sequoia.
It's Sequoia? It's Sequoia?
Sequoia. No, probably I would. No, I don't I don't want to get into political discussions here. No, but uh, I I think wouldn't be Puerto Rico a good fit?
It
Since
could.
I think they're waiting a long time right now to get in, right?
Well, you've got a mix of things. I mean, there definitely is a push for statehood in Puerto Rico, but you've also got others who want, independence. And then, of course, there's those who just want the status quo to remain a territory
Hey,
where.
okay, guys, like I gotta clarify one thing here.
But I
I
mean,
have
that's with
no
anything. You've
idea.
got multiple sides to it, and you can look at the pros and cons from them all. It's a complex issue. But yeah.
Yeah, no, like I just wanted to say, like I was just thrown under the bus here. I have no idea if that's good or bad, like to join as a 51st state. But like that state came to my mind, like when I was asked about. So, but like I have no idea if maybe there are some good reasons against that
Hmm.
or whatever. Um, of those countries that we talked about, I would definitely like Sequoia.
Sequoia.
Yeah.
I still stick with I mean, I'm not saying no to Sequoia, but I definitely Jefferson and Lincoln come to mind. I don't know why, but I just think the map works better that way. I think it looks and
Uh,
works better from like a geopolitical
yeah, yeah, that's true. Like
perspective.
that's definitely true. That could be. And I gotta say, I like it when they like. I mean, the names I like them as well. Like because I mean, it was not presidents per se because Franklin was not a president,
Sure.
but I
Founding
think the names
father.
in general
Yeah.
are cool.
Yeah.
Founding fathers.
Yeah, no, most of the states, at least the ones we talked about, I thought had interesting names. Westlvania, that was Westlvania, excuse me.
I always have to think about Transylvania when
No,
I hear that.
exactly, exactly. So, and I mean, honestly, when you look at it, there's an argument for there's an argument for any of these states. There's a reason why people advocated one way or another for them. It didn't just happen in a vacuum.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
So this whole situation, we'll see where it goes. Um,
well,
I think it's fascinating.
yeah, and I mean, there's plenty of other ghost states for us to look into besides the ones we covered in this. So who knows? Maybe next, July.
Next 4th of July.
Yeah, this will become a little bit of a reoccurring thing. And of course, this isn't the only themed week we have planned. We have other themed weeks, not weeks, excuse me, months. So if you have
Yeah,
any you'd like
and
to
one of
suggest.
the areas we will cover, we already mentioned them in this episode, so go to listen to it again.
Yeah, I guess there's an Easter egg hidden in here.
Yeah.
But no, we'll definitely be doing more themed months, or I guess there might be themed, like multi-week things as well. We'll figure it out. But if
Yeah.
you guys have any suggestions, please feel free to let us know.
Any national holiday
Yeah, no,
from your
exactly,
country?
exactly. And yeah, I'm trying to think of anything else here really quickly. Well, I will just touch upon the flag very quickly. I know we did a little bit, but I did find the history behind the US flag, and of course, that's a new mini series on the channel. We're going to be looking into the flags of other countries that do exist and also some, you know, non-country flags as well. So we probably will look into like obviously, ghost countries and secessionist movements, autonomous movements, rebel groups. We're going to be looking into a lot of flags. But
Yeah.
I find that fascinating because there's just so much history tied into it, and in particular with the U.S., like the Serapis flag. And I may not be Serapis, I might not be pronouncing that perfectly here, but I find the history behind that just absolutely fascinating. How, in many ways, like I said, there was the uh, Captain John Paul Jones, if I'm getting my names right here. Hopefully I am, but he was, part of the Continental Navy operating in the waters near Great Britain at the time. His ship went down. He captured the British ship. He wanted to dock in the ports of the United Provinces, so the Dutch ports on Texel, and he had lost his flag, so he kind of had to make something up on the spot with, his knowledge. So that's how we got this flag, and how it's still actually on the USS John Paul Jones or Paul Jones today. It's fascinating to me. I don't know. That was just a really interesting little bit of history, and also just staying on the U.S. flag, how the arrangement of the stars in the canton wasn't really standardized for so much American history, and you had these weird variants where it was shaped like, a circle or a star or all these other complex designs. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely is because I didn't know that neither. I mean, I didn't know that at all. That I mean, I knew that there was the 13 colonies flag, so the Betsy Ross flag, I think it's
Mm,
called.
mm.
That one, I knew it, and I even knew that one how it looks today, of course. But I didn't know. I didn't never thought about the process to it because more states were added and stuff, and how it evolved. So I think that's actually interesting. Some of them actually really look cool.
Yeah. Oh no, I really liked some. I mean, I might, I might make a purchase for some historical flags here. I think that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, if you, by the way, if you want to buy a flag, please go on our link. No, no,
Yeah, we're
no, we,
not at that point yet. Maybe someday we'll have our merch and stuff, but someday.
yeah, who knows? One
Yeah,
day in the future.
yeah, no, exactly, exactly. With more growth on the channel and stuff, it'll happen. I'm pretty sure.
Let's be confident about that.
Yeah, no, exactly, exactly. But no, I hope you guys enjoyed this look into, well, American history this week, but particularly that of forgotten or lost or ghost states. Like I said, there's plenty more, and we probably will get back to them at some point. And this is something we might do with other countries as well, because I mean, obviously the focus of the channel is ghost countries, but we do dive into stuff like, geography, flags now. We've got planned mini-series about biographies and other things, military histories of like battles and stuff. So it's all forgotten history with the main, bread and butter of the channel still being ghost countries. But, if you have anything to suggest, even if it's like within in country, like a territorial change that was significant within a country, that would be interesting to look into as well. And I think we actually kind of do have some of those when we're talking about we've had recommendations for like gray Ukraine and raspberry or purple Ukraine. So, there's things we're going to be talking about that I think are kind of I don't know what they fall. They don't fall in the ghost country category, but they're within this genre we've created here.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. Like, I mean, we got so many ghost states or ghost countries up there, but as you already mentioned before, like there are so many interesting and I mean, the word for our channel is actually overlooked events in history which happened, which actually nowadays are kind of forgotten. That's actually fascinating, and sometimes when you do research about other things and oh yeah, and there was that by the way, and you're like, wait, what was that? And then you look into it and it's like, oh wow, okay. um and I think these kind of moments are pretty fascinating as well, especially when they are like this kind of forgotten. Because I mean, everybody knows about the Battle of Hastings, for example, but that there were probably, I mean, I don't know in this case, but that there are many other. I think there was a battle just before the Battle of Hastings,
Mhm.
um, and I think the reason why the king lost was because he had to march super fast to the other location. There he lost. But I could be wrong here. But anyway, it's there are many events where similar things happened where actually a very important event took place before, but it's not talked about or just very few, rarely talked about.
Oh no, exactly. Believe us, we've been preparing some of these mini series for a while. I mean, some are still just kind of, in the brainstorming stage, but there is a lot of chapters of forgotten history. Yeah, it'll be I think you guys will enjoy it, and it all fits within, and some of them do connect with ghost countries themselves, so it works.
Yeah, so tune in for our next episodes.
Yeah, so on that note, I guess peace for now, and we'll see you guys next time.
Yeah, see you guys later. Bye.
Bye.